Hello, everyone. We're going, oh, wait. Okay. So I want to say hello. I apologize. As you know, life happens. So we have a lot of machines outside today. But this is Promise Day. Promise Day is a series of sexual assault and domestic violence awareness events. Sexual assault being in the spring, domestic violence in the fall. These started in spring of 2017, actually because of a student who came in wearing a wedding dress. And at that time in Britain, there had just been a march against domestic violence and sexual assault where men and women marched in the streets and went to work wearing wedding dresses. And we thought, what a great idea. Because one of the things a lot of students have to deal with when going to school is life. And life, unfortunately, sometimes has some sides to it that require a little help and a little support. And so in spring of 17, we had a little over 100 students. And then over the next few years, we would have roughly 400 students for each event, where we were doing a series of 4 events and workshops. And for those of you who say, why would this matter in COVID? We actually do know that the rates, unfortunately, are on the rise, despite the fact, or maybe because of the fact, that we're more isolated than before. And so it's important to know what resources are out there. Our ultimate goal always with the Promise Day Committee is to empower our Eagles and the students, the staff, the faculty. Those are the Eagles at Wake Tech. And we want to empower you because what we do here has a ripple effect on the entire community. And this is our chance to help make our world better. So if you are watching this, it is statistically impossible that you do not know someone who has been somehow sexually assaulted. Now, you may not know it. That's the thing. Sometimes there's a shame or a lack of discussion, but it doesn't mean it doesn't exist. But it's statistically impossible not to know someone. So even if it's not you, the information you get today may help you to get help for someone else. So we're going to do a series of presentations, and this today includes finding out about campus resources, off-campus resources, when to call, what to do, what's consent and what isn't. And I want to thank, even though thank yous are always at the end, I want to thank first Sarah Rose, who's our tech guru, who's running this because we can't run events without her. But I also want to thank Wellness Center, the police, Title IX, SGA, because Wake Tech is not just a community, it's a family. And we could not do it if we didn't all work together. And while we're talking about the SGA real quickly, I will try and ask Sarah Rose, and I will learn how to line this up. There are about 80 books that the SGA has called Know My Name. It is a real story of a woman who was raped. And even though people stopped the rapist, they all had done so much damage to her, and it took a long time for recovery. And that's what this is about the trial, about her healing, about everything that she went through. So the SGA has 80 copies that they'll be giving away. So go to the SGA's website and you can take a look. Now, we have different speakers coming in at different times. I'm going to actually move things around and start with the Wellness Center and Elaine Rodriguez because she's got a meeting later today. Then we'll go over to Wake Tech Police Charlie Corr. And then we'll move into Title IX, which Title IX I'm a big fan because they offer a protected and safe environment for all students and faculty on campus. So Elaine Rodriguez, if I can get you to introduce yourself and talk a little about the Wellness Center, please.
Yes, thank you, Claire. Again, my name is Elaine Rodriguez. I am one of the wellness counselors at Wake Tech. My colleague Amanda Allen is also a counselor. Amanda, are you here? I'm not able to see your box.
I'm here.
Wonderful, good. So yeah, we offer brief solution-focused therapy to all Wake Tech students. It is a free service. And the primary goal, because it is short-term counseling, will of course address immediate needs. So safety, right, number one. We want to get you connected to the appropriate resources while we provide interim support for your emotional and mental health. We are always available, Monday through Friday, 8 to 5 p.m. You can easily book an appointment online. Everything is entirely confidential. This does not become a part of your Wake Tech academic record or anything like that. Although, again, if there are immediate safety concerns, we do need to involve other parties. And I'm sure Lieutenant Corr and the Title IX folks will discuss some of that too. But Amanda, I'm not sure if you wanted to add anything to that too.
I think you covered it all. I think I will just state, where I'm located. When we are on campus, I'm located at South Campus and RTP.
Oh yes, I forgot to say that too. I'm primarily at Northern Campus 4 days a week and then 1 day a week at Perry Health Sciences. But we are meeting for entirely virtual appointments right now, just due to the limits of counseling. Doesn't really work with a mask. So we're meeting with students online, and it's really easy to book an appointment. But if anyone does have any questions that's listening, you can reach out to Amanda or myself. Our general email is wellness@waketech.edu, and then the website is wellness.waketech.edu. So please, again, don't hesitate to reach out. We're here to support you.
Absolutely.
Thank you guys for stopping by. And I just want to make sure students know when they say it's confidential, it really is. I was a counselor in my former life, and what happens with your counselor stays there. And that's one of the most important things. The only time they would ever go outside that is if you're a risk of harm to yourself or others, which those of in my abnormal psych class know that's the one caveat. But they're going to talk to you before that. It's not like they go, to a dinner party and start having discussions. This is why we need them as counselors, because this gives you a chance to voice it. So if you're mad at me, if you're mad at your spouse, etc., it stays within that private, sacred realm, and that's so important. And what they can do is they can talk to you, and if it looks like you need something well beyond, they also have resources. So don't sit here and say, well, what I've got going on is too much, I can't reach out to them. Reach out to them, because every single person who came today came because we want to empower our Eagles. We want to support you. So go on, fill on that intake form, and I've had students who've met with both of them, and even though I didn't ask, they told me that it was a wonderful experience and amazingly helpful. So this is free for students that are enrolled. Please take advantage of this opportunity. I also recommend just going to them when you're stressed out during exams. It's amazingly helpful, and they have a lot of tricks to get you through that. So thank you both. I know you have to go to a meeting. And so next up, I'm going to introduce Charlie Corr, and I want to tell you all about this man because he is a very wonderful man who has helped us since day one. And I have to tell you, our events would not feel as safe as they did if he had not been involved. He has made sure that students could speak, they could ask questions in a safe and supportive environment. And he has a world and wealth of experience behind him, everything from a beat cop and dealing with, I won't call out all your scars, but one scar comes from a domestic violence situation that, he has this understanding that goes beyond, he read it from a book. He's done a lot of the real world stuff, and having his expertise at Wake Tech has been amazingly helpful. So Charlie, let you go ahead and introduce yourself and the police, please.
Okay, well, first, thank you for that very kind introduction. And also thank you for inviting me again to speak at this very important event. I can't see any students right now, but it's good being with you. I know there's been some very difficult times. Wake Tech is a very sad and lonely place without you. And we certainly look forward to everybody returning as soon as possible. So just to start, in regard to sexual assault, my 39 years of law enforcement experience, 20 with the New York City Police Department, the last 19, 3 of them were in a high school, and the other years were at NC State at Wake Tech. All of my experience has been dealing with female victims and male suspects. But I would like to acknowledge that sexual assault can and does happen to anyone. But my dealings have been with females as victims. So I just wanted to get that out there. At NC State and at Wake Tech, one of the common denominators I found with sexual assaults, not every time, but a lot of the time, is alcohol and drugs. Please be careful when you're out there having a good time. Make sure you're looking out for one another. And if you see a friend that's in trouble, if they're overserved, or if you see somebody that's with them that's a little shaky, make sure you step in and protect them. If a sexual assault were to occur on campus, and unfortunately a few have, when they're reported to us, we would investigate it. and we would take appropriate police action. If that included an arrest, one would be. We would go over a safety plan, keeping you safe on campus and safe off campus. We provide escorts. We've met students, faculty, and staff at their vehicle and either walked right next to them or walked 20 feet behind them to their class, back to their car. We'll do whatever we can do to keep you safe and make you feel safe. We also can help with providing parking. We would also try to connect the student or anyone with the resources within the college, and that would include our Title IX office and our wellness center. They both do a fantastic job in helping students. And lastly, I would just like to say, if you find yourself or a friend being a victim of sexual assault, domestic violence, or really any type of serious crime, I can't urge you enough to seek assistance. Being a victim and becoming a survivor, it's a process, and it's a very difficult process. And I don't think it's one that can be done on one's own. So it's hard to reach out, but I can't urge you enough to do it. And I know at some point you'll be very happy that you did. Again, thank you for having me, and thank you for everyone here speaking and being present.
Thank you, Charlie. And he is always busy, but I have to tell you, if it sounds like I'm singing his praises, I am. I want you to know that I've had more than one student come to me after an assault or after an experience that they were unsure whether or not they needed to take it to the police. And he is so supportive and so caring. And when students are in that vulnerable point, it's important to have someone who is willing to reach out like that. So please know that you can always approach him directly. He is one of those where he doesn't worry about, hitting the right marks at first. He wants you to first talk to somebody and then get to where you need to be. So he's an amazing resource. So thank you. I know you've got a lot on your plate, and I appreciate it. And before we go further, I just want to point out, this is one thing that a lot of students don't understand about Wake Tech, and it's so important. I've had students wander into my office after these events, or even when we went virtual, ask for a Teams call. A lot of people don't realize how much we care and how invested we are, and how we realize your success can be derailed by 5 minutes. And that 5-minute interaction can destroy you, even though it's not anything that's your fault. It's the fault of the other person. And that's why we want you to understand that these resources are here. I had a student come in to me after the event, fall before last, and say, I think I've been assaulted and I don't know if it counts. And I have to tell you, the Wake Tech police were amazing. They were supportive. They were willing to do whatever she needed. Did she need them to go with her to court, etc. So don't ever think that we don't care or we're not invested, because everybody here is invested in your success and does want you to do well. Now, one of the things a lot of students don't know is what Title IX is. And we're so honored that they came with us today, because I had a student one time who challenged me. I said, you can't bully someone in a classroom. That's not acceptable. And they said, oh, Title IX is about sports. Title IX is about so much more than that. And it's about having a safe, productive, harassment-free environment where we all feel safe to grow and learn as we should. And so we actually have two people here today. And I have to tell you, they've got a lot of experience behind them. Both have served in investigative roles. Anthony has, I don't know if I should introduce you separately and let one speak and then the other. So I'll start with Anthony. Anthony has actually been with Wake Tech, if I'm correct, since 2013. And he is not only recruitment and outreach, but a Title IX investigator, and very pro-student, wants to listen, wants to hear you and help empower you. So let me start by letting you speak, and then Kris, I'll get to you next.
Yes, so for you all that are not familiar with what Title IX is, the actual definition of it is Title IX of the Education Amendments Act of 1972 prohibits discrimination on the basis of sex in any federally funded education program or activity. So basically, any school that you attend, whether it be Wake Tech, if you're transferring to a four-year university, or college in the state of North Carolina or outside of North Carolina, Title IX, your rights as a student falls under all those schools that receive federal student aid. And obviously a lot of students do receive federal financial aid. But as you see on the slide here, this is kind of what you would call the hierarchy for the Title IX department. We don't actually have a physical location. What you'll see in the upcoming slide, it'll actually show you where you can go and report stuff. But our Title IX coordinator is Laura Pathay. Our Title IX deputy coordinators are Karen Finney and Benita Clark. And then noted, we have 4 Title IX investigators, myself, Kathy Reeves, Kris Ross, who was on today's session. You'll hear from her shortly. And then our 4th Title IX investigator, Paul Jenkins. We are actually spread out throughout the college. We actually have our traditional offices on several campuses across the board. But one of the important things I want you all to understand about Title IX is that you are able to report stuff. It is confidential, just like representatives from the Wellness Center talked about a few minutes ago, is that everything is confidential. When you come to us, our main objective is to investigate the actual claims made and make sure we eliminate every roadblock for you students to make sure you can attend class, whether it be online or whether it be in person and on campus, to make sure you can be successful. So that is what our primary objectives are throughout this process. We are not law enforcement officers. I just want to point that out and make that a difference. Our process is more for internally, for the college administratively, and making sure all of our students can attend classes in a safe environment and be productive. And now I'll hand it over to my colleague, Kris.
All right, thank you, Anthony. Yes, as mentioned before, we're a great resource here along with the Wake Tech family to include all of the team members that we have that Anthony's already gone over. But we, again, as a Wake Tech support, along with Amanda and the counseling team, this slide represents all of the resources that we have, to include what Charlie Corr has already spoken about with the campus police as a resource. Our Title IX policy is listed here. This is a link that we can provide for you. If you actually click on that link at any point in time, it will take you to the Get Help page, which not only describes the actual policy, but also gives you access to us in any claims. Again, I mentioned the wellness resource. We have staff and faculty employee assistance programs. So all of these other resources that we have here at Wake Tech. I myself am also a trained investigator and have been for, I guess, the newest on the team. I have to add that. And I am actually located on the southern campus. Again, Anthony mentioned we're spread throughout. We will be given a more in-depth presentation next week. We wanted to make sure today that we actually introduced ourselves and ourselves also as an additional resource here with Wake Tech.
And just to add what Kris talked about, so just keep in mind on the second link where it says Get Help, if you click that link, it'll take you directly to a reporting form. Keep in mind, if you don't experience any type of assault or discrimination based on sex, if you witness something, you can report it too. And you also can report it anonymously. It does give you the option for that. So I just want to make that clear. If you also witness something or have a concern about something, you too as a witness can actually fill that form out also. That first link that annotates our Title IX policy for the college. It's a pretty robust policy, but it has all of our contact information on there as well. When you complete that Get Help form, response time is usually 72 hours. You're going to hear from us either via email, voicemail, or if we're in the fall or spring semesters, if we are having trouble getting in contact with those last two modes, we'll actually go out and try to reach out to you via your classroom if you're on one of the campuses. So just keep that in mind as well. And then obviously all the resources that, as Kris mentioned, all of these resources are free, okay? There's nothing you have to pay extra for. Obviously, we have a virtual environment now where we're giving access to all of the students to take advantage of these opportunities if needed. But thank you for the time. Thank you for inviting us to today's session.
Thank you. And I did not introduce Kris because I was thinking I was going to go separately. But for those who don't know, Kris Ross, she looks so young, and you really, I mean, it's just unfair. She's also been with Wake Tech since 2013, and she's got over 23 years of experience in human resources, staffing specialist, policies, mediation. So you've got a couple of geniuses right here. So if you're not sure what's going on, ask them. And I think that's one of the things we really want to emphasize. Anthony, you were mentioning bystanders. A lot of times people don't say something because a lot of us have heard of bystander apathy or the bystander effect that, oh, someone else will report it. But if you see it and you're not sure, talk to them. And if they can, they're definitely going to protect your privacy. It's important for us to have the kind of world we want to live in by participating in a way that we want others to participate. So when you see something and you don't say it, you're letting it happen, you're walking away. And then if it happens to you and someone doesn't say anything, that cycle repeats. So go to them. It doesn't necessarily mean that it's going to rain hell down, because I had one student who was hesitant to even report because she was concerned about, oh, all of the ramifications and what's going to happen. Please understand, they're going to take their time. These are smart people. They do not fly off the cuff. They are going to investigate. They're going to be thorough. They're going to check every side. And maybe if you saw it and it was an area that has a security camera, they may go check that footage. Maybe you saw something that was actually part of something else. So don't ever hesitate to report or come in and say, here's what I'm concerned about, because they will take it from there and they will help you out. Now, before we go forward with our main speaker, who has been having a little fun logging in today, I wanted to see, are there any questions from the students? And Sarah, you've got control of that side of it. So do we have any questions about Title IX or wellness services or the police and what's available for students? Okay, so no new questions right now. Then I'm going to give you what I've gotten in the past just so that you have an idea. Number one, is it confidential? They will protect your confidentiality unless there is a need not to do so. They will tell you. They're never going to just out you. Should you report it if you're unsure? Absolutely. If you are not sure if it is assault, if you're not sure of what you've seen, please go ahead and let them know that you're not sure what's happening, because then they can investigate and take it further. So while we're waiting for our speaker from InterAct, I'm going to talk briefly about consent, because there's a misunderstanding about what it is or isn't. It's not about what you're wearing. It is not about where you are, what time of night, etc. Should you take safety measures? Absolutely. But in the end, it is that other person's decision. So what we recommend is when something happens, and if you look at any of the forums on sexual assault, they'll say, if you need to, write it down. Understand that when the police ask a lot of questions and you're upset and you're tired and you just want to go away and hide, they have to ask while it's fresh. They want to get to you before other people do input. And so think about what your timeline is. Think about what's happened when. Is there any evidence you can give them? And again, if you're a witness, then just give them the information you have. You don't need to add to it. You don't need to make it more than it is. Just let them know exactly what you saw. And if they need to investigate, they can. For Title IX, I was going to ask, along with the form, what types of things do you want students to bring to you?
What was that question? I'm sorry.
Okay, so what kind of situations would you want students to bring? Any, regardless of?
Yeah, so I mean, I mean, we mentioned this earlier about students, about the stereotype with Title IX just falling under athletics and students that participate in athletics, right? But I want to be clear. So with that, and I mean all virtual events, so all virtual platforms, right? If you're being discriminated against, being bullied, a classmate you might have sent a text message or inappropriate message to, maybe a group chat, maybe you're doing a group project, those type of things. You know, under pre-COVID conditions, you know, a lot of the clubs and organizations go out and they leave the state, or they leave Wake Tech campuses and they go out and they compete, right? They do competitions and stuff like that. if something happens or you witness something happen, that falls under Title IX. The incidents don't necessarily have to happen on campus, okay? It could be a school-sponsored event, and that could be competitions, like I mentioned, a club organizational event, an athletic event as well. So I just want students to understand that, and any potential students that we have coming on campus, for them to understand that. During the investigation process, and Kris can add on to this. Obviously, we have a standardized form that we like for all students, whether you're a bystander or a person that experienced some type of assault, to go in and complete that form and do it as thoroughly as possible. We usually ask for a statement about what happened, but primarily, if you feel that your safety is at risk, Title IX should not be your first point of contact, right? You should be calling 911, right, and contacting the police. And then also notifying campus police and making them aware of the situation. Title IX can wait when it comes to safety, right? We want to make sure that students feel comfortable with reaching out to our campus police. We have very experienced officers. You just heard from Charlie a few minutes ago. So we just want to make that clear. Obviously, if you have questions, if you have questions about your rights as a student at Wake Tech, based on something you experience, obviously we're here to help you, but we want to make sure that students are safe first before we begin the Title IX process.
Can I jump in there 1 second?
Absolutely.
So people aren't always comfortable going to the police first. So if that's the situation, I would really urge you to just go to someone, and then they can point you in the right direction. And then if you meet with a counselor, sometimes the police end up being the last people that are notified. We would prefer to be the first, but if what makes the student most comfortable is meeting with other people first until they come meet with us, that's acceptable as well. So I just want to get that out there.
Thank you. And I think that's one of the hard things. When we have students after this event, they often come to us because they just don't want to go alone. Or they don't know, do they start with police? Do they start with Title IX? For students, one thing they don't realize is that you actually have a way of making sure, and that not only are they safe walking to and from their cars, but you can advise them about things like scheduling, preventative measures. And for those who don't know, because we want to save campus, that one incident that may happen off campus may spill over. So if you're being harassed or stalked, if you have an issue with an ex or an ex wannabe and you don't want them around, if you talk to the police, if you talk to Title IX, they can help you before it becomes bigger than it has to be. And I think that's the thing. We want to be proactive and not reactive. And a lot of times students are reactive instead of proactive. So we really encourage you, bring it to the experts before something goes way off the grid where we can't do as much or help you. We don't want to be the after the fact. We want to be there from the very beginning. By the way, as a professor, if anyone is ever harassing you in class and you aren't sure where it falls, come talk to us. We want a safe classroom, and that is one thing. I had a student who was being pestered by someone and didn't realize she could tell me because she said, well, it's not grade school. And I said, I don't care. We don't. It doesn't matter if it's grade school. It doesn't matter if it's college. You have the right to be in a safe, harassment-free zone. So we want you here and we want you safe. Okay, we are still waiting for our speaker. She was having trouble logging in. But Lena, I believe that, we have a question. Let me do that first. Who can be found on the Southern Campus for Title IX? And Kris, you had that, didn't you?
Yes, I explained that. So myself, Kris Ross, and Kathy Reeves are definitely located on your Southern Wake campus.
And our Title IX coordinator, Laura Bethay, she also has her office there as well.
What would you want students to do if it's online? Does it?
Well,
go ahead.
Yeah, so it's actually the same process, and that is actually why, because of all of our classes since last spring switched over to primarily virtual classroom instruction, right? So I just want students to be familiar with that. You know, when people think of Title IX, you know, they think of something happening to them in person. You know, but that doesn't necessarily happen, especially in this virtual world that we're in. So that's, you know, the part that I want to make, you know, our attendees tune in today and help them understand that it not only, you know, involves in-person interaction with somebody, but also in the virtual environment as well.
Thank you. And that is one thing, by the way, we're talking about on the 13th. We're going to talk about digital media because a lot of times students don't realize that we do consider certain text harassment or pictures or oversharing of certain pictures. And so we want you to be aware not only of potential ramifications, but when is it too much? When can you report? And a lot of you are using Teams in your classroom. If someone is coming in constantly at you on Teams, we want to know, because that is an extension of our campus. So please do not hesitate to come to us. Now, we are waiting for our speaker, but while we are waiting, let me tell you just real quickly, you are going to get an introduction from Lena Husseini. And Lena Husseini and Bayan Bali are our two social sciences federal work study students who have been absolutely phenomenal. And we're putting their thank you here because we want to make sure people hear us shout it from the rooftops. Their energy is amazing. So when students are interested in helping with events like this, please come to the professors. We really want to hear from you. Paige, you're there. Do you want to say hello real quickly? You want to try and come on in?
Can y'all hear me okay?
We can.
As everybody may already know, I've been having some internet connection issues, so I really thank you for your patience. And I've been able to hear clips of what's going on, but I just wanted to add in as well that I just consider it a great privilege that I've been able to be involved in Promise Day. I think for about the last 3 to 4 years, Claire and I were doing the math, and we are grateful for all of the folks that we've been introduced to, most recently including Kris and Anthony through our Title IX department. So I just wanted to say a big thank you. Oh, and Sharice is joining us. Yay! Sharice, you and I both had struggled joining the call today. So I just wanted to reach out to you virtually.
We're just keeping it real. That's all that's going on. We're keeping it real.
Thank you. It's been, oh my gosh. Technology, love it, but when it's acting up, it acts up. So
absolutely.
I apologize.
No, thank you. And now you are the ultimate of the conference. So I was introducing Lena, and Lena has, as I mentioned, and you didn't get to hear, but Lena Husseini and Bayan have been amazing, and they are our students who have been just such a power force. So Lena, could you please introduce our speaker? Thank you.
Thank you so much for that introduction. And hello, everyone. I am excited and honored to introduce our guest speaker, Miss Sharice Potts. She is the Community Awareness Coordinator at InterAct. She's deeply passionate about her work and looks forward to broadening its outreach and awareness efforts. Ms. Sharice works on facilitating domestic and sexual violence presentations in the community, as well as coordinating events for staff and volunteers. A little background information about Ms. Sharice is she's a New Yorker at heart. She has truly enjoyed living in North Carolina the past 9 years. She received a Bachelor of Arts in Criminology and a Master of Public Administration from John Jay College of Criminal Justice. Outside of work, she's a wife and a mother of 3 and loves spending time with her family. Now I'm going to turn it over to Ms. Sharice herself.
Lena, thank you so much for that introduction. And that was my next question. How am I going to share these slides? This is a new platform for me. I'm always definitely willing to learn different platforms, but this is definitely new. So, but anyway, thank you all so much, Claire and Paige, just for this opportunity for this invite. And so without further ado, we'll just jump right in it since these technical difficulties have delayed the process. So I'll just get right into it. So you could go to the next slide, or do I have control slide? Okay. So before we get into sexual assault, I'm going to just give you a little background about InterAct, because never know who knows about us. So InterAct is Wake County's comprehensive service provider for victims of domestic violence and sexual assault. So we are a dual agency, and we're right in Raleigh. And our mission is to save lives, rebuild lives, and secure safer futures. So you can go to the next slide. And so just a brief overview of our services. We have 3 24-hour crisis lines. They're in English and in Spanish, and we do utilize the national language line. So if somebody calls that doesn't speak English or Spanish, we have interpreters available for that. Big thing with our crisis lines, this is our single point of contact right now, so we are doing everything virtually. So we encourage you to use our crisis lines. And as I always like to say, our crisis lines are not only for victims or survivors, but they are also for service providers, concerned citizens, family, friends. You can utilize this crisis lines if you know someone has been sexually assaulted and you want to help, but you don't really know what to say, what to do. We encourage you to call our crisis lines and allow our crisis counselors to kind of walk you through that. And then we do have support groups. Our support groups, well, let me say this, InterAct will service anyone, any people or gender identities, but our support groups are specifically for women and children to kind of help them process that trauma. And then we have a personal economic empowerment program, and this goes more in line with our shelter. We do have a shelter for people that are fleeing abuse. So we help them get over any hurdles that they might have to be able to live independently. So financial, transportation, helping them get childcare, helping them get jobs, whatever it is that they need, we help them along that process. And then one of the other things I want to mention is our e-filing. So we do protective orders, electronic protective orders. So if someone needed a protective order, they can call our crisis lines, and our crisis counselors would help them do that, fill out that paperwork. And then we have in-house partners with legal aid, the DA's office, and Easter Seals, which also provides substance abuse and mental health counseling. And one of the biggest things I want to highlight our services is our Solace Center. And at the end of this presentation, I'll get further into it, but our Solace Center is Wake County's only community-based sexual assault forensic center. And that is located in our facility on Oberlin Road. And as I said, as we go further in, I will get more in depth about our Solace Center. So those are just some of our services. You can go to the next slide. So when we talk about sexual violence, you hear different terms, you hear rape, you hear sexual assault, you hear all these different terms, but we like to use sexual violence because that's the umbrella term. That's the term that encompasses all of the different acts within sexual violence. And sexual violence, as we determined, it means that someone forces or manipulates somebody into unwanted sexual activity without their consent. And we'll get into what consent is later on. And there's some reasons why someone won't consent or not able to consent, whether that's fear, age, illness, disability, or they're not able because of drugs or alcohol, just as you said, mental capacity, they might not be able to consent. And we'll talk a little bit more about all of these. But just keep this in mind that it's not only force, but we always forget about that second part, which is also manipulation. So when talking about sexual violence, there might not be force, but there might be some manipulation. So just keep that in mind as we go further. You can go to the next slide. So these are the type of sexual violence. As I said, there's rape, sexual assault, drug facilitated sexual assault. It encompasses child sexual abuse and incest, sexual harassment, sexual exploitation, and then some of the other ones we don't necessarily think about, but exposing your genitals without other people's consent. Back in the day, we used to call that like a flasher. You know, you had that like long coat on and coming out naked and showing their body parts, masturbating in public, And then as technology has gotten further, we've seen a lot more with the digital aspect of it, with the sexting and sending pictures of themselves through text or social media apps or whatever the case may be. So it encompasses all of these different types of sexual violence. You can go to the next slide. And so let's just think about what's going on and how big is this problem, because I think that sometimes when we hear about domestic violence or we hear about sexual assault, we think that these are isolated incidents and we think that they're not as prevalent as they really are. But you see every 73 seconds somebody in America is sexually assaulted. 73 seconds. So the millions of people that will be sexually assaulted while we're just on this call, on this broadcast. So it's a big problem. 1 in 6 American women and 1 in 33 men will experience some form of attempted or completed rape in their lifetime. And then if we bring it to children, we're talking about every 9 minutes, CPS is substantiating claims of sexual abuse. And they substantiated in 2016 that 57,329 children were victims of sexual abuse, and most of them, the majority of them, between 12 and 17 years old. So the numbers are staggering, and it's sad just to know that the children, even children, are being exposed to sexual violence. Next slide, please. And so I definitely wanted to just kind of look at, when we're talking about sexual violence, campus. So women ages 18 to 24 are 3 times more likely to experience sexual violence. And on a campus, this is just the overall numbers of students that experience rape or sexual assault by force, violence, or incapacitation. So overall, nationally, about 13% of all students have experienced some type of sexual violence. 9.7 females and 2.5 males of graduate students. Undergrad is quite higher, 26%, and 6.8% of undergrads. And then if you're looking at transgender, non-conforming, that is high as well, 23.1. And we have seen over the last, I want to say, 3 or so years, just an increase in the violence against transgender women of color. So we definitely have seen an increase in that violence. And when we're thinking about sexual violence, remember all of these numbers that you are hearing, they are very conservative because most people don't report. So these are just based on the ones that did report in some way or another. So you see 1 out of 5 college-age people might receive services, but only 20% of those will report to law enforcement. So 32% of non-student females the same age, they do make a report, but on campus, it's very unlikely that they will make a report. Some may seek services from, the victim services or that's on campus, but very rarely will they report to law enforcement. So these numbers are definitely very conservative. And there's a lot of reasons why victims decide not to report. And just in the surveys, like many believe, the highest was like, many believe that it's like a personal matter. It's not something that they want to, talk about. Fear of retaliation is another big one. Not being believed. So and just that stigma that goes around victims of sexual assault. So those are some of the reasons why a lot of victims say that they don't report, and just how they might be looked at, perceived, or treated by law enforcement. And so those are definitely some of the reasons why some females decide not to report. Next slide. So this is a big, big, big thing. So when we're thinking about sexual assault, remember in the definition, it's, someone taken over by force or manipulating someone. So you can't talk about sexual violence without talking about consent, because that's the big thing. So what is consent? Is that mutual agreement between the two parties that they're going to engage in an act, and that's just a broad definition, to give approval, to express some type of agreement between the two parties, that they will engage in these different acts. So what one of the biggest things that we want to bring out when we're talking about consent, in North Carolina, you see, and I have that date and that statue up there, but you can withdraw your consent at any time. It's not you say yes and you agree to a certain act at a certain time and you are now bound by that. No. Consent can be withdrawn at any time. So you previously agreed, now you disagree, you don't have to go through it. During the act, whatever that is, if you decide during the act that you no longer want to participate in this, you can withdraw your consent. You are not bound at any point to go along with something. So really understanding and want people to know their rights. You can withdraw your consent at any time. And it's just kind of like a course that should be like an ongoing kind of conversation, if you will, during the act. It's not you asked, you said yes, and that was it. No, because just kind of really getting in the habit of checking with that person as you begin or even during engaging in these acts is to make sure that you and that person are still on the same page. And that's where they have this term thinking about like enthusiastic consent, where you're not only did you hear that verbal, which you absolutely always should hear that verbal communication as to yes, but as you're going along, with the acts that just kind of saying yes to or getting expressed yes to specific acts, because I might agree to kissing, but if you want to do something else, then you need to check back in with me again to say, hey, is this okay? And when they're thinking about these terms of enthusiastic consent, it's more so looking at that body language as well, looking at if that person is smiling, if that person is pulling you into them, just kind of really looking at all of those cues, together to know that you and that person is still on the same page and that person is still engaged in, in this act. And that should happen anytime and every time you try to change any of the acts. You was doing one thing, but now you want to do something else. That conversation, looking at those cues should happen again, just to make sure. You could go to the next slide. Another important thing that I want you to know is that the age of consent in North Carolina is 16 years old. 16. And children cannot consent to sex, period. There is no such thing as it was consensual when it's a child. So those are two things that you definitely need to know. And, you're looking at college students and sometimes, just leaving high school and just kind of thinking about that and dating someone. There is that Romeo and Juliet, clause that if somebody's under 16, but that person's within 4 years, they can possibly engage in something without prosecution. But we just want to kind of steer clear of those, those type of things. And just remember that the age of consent is 16. That's the main thing. Understanding. So if they're under 16, they cannot give consent, period. Okay, so that's just something big that we want to kind of think about. And then also, when I told you about the manipulation part of that definition, consent does not look like, constantly putting pressure on someone to the point where they now say yes, or the person is so scared of what you will do or something that will happen to them that they agree. So that is not a free given yes. That's not a free given consent. it does not look like you just pressuring the person, putting fear in the person. That is not consent. Consent has to be freely given by someone that is 16 or older. So just wanted to kind of put that out there. You could go to the next slide. And this is something else, especially when I'm doing a presentation on domestic violence, but also now with sexual assault, just really getting you to think through who can be a victim, because I think sometimes when we think of victims, we paint this picture, and if that person doesn't fit in that thought process, then they can't possibly be a victim. But unfortunately, as we looked at the statistics before, every 73 seconds somebody is being sexually assaulted. So anyone can be a victim, and it does not matter, their sexual orientation, their race, their religion, their socioeconomic background. None of that stuff matters. None of that matters. It crosses all lines and all barriers. So anyone can be a victim of sexual violence. And as you see from this last statement, it includes children. We talked about that, teens, adults, and elders. Yes, elders are sexually assaulted as well. Next slide. So as I said, anyone can be a victim, but there are some populations that are just more vulnerable. And we just go through these quickly. Children, children, the number one thing is accessibility, because children, 90% of the children know their abusers, know their perpetrators, and so a lot of it is accessibility, just being able to have private time with the child, and then being able to manipulate the child to scare them into being quiet, and not telling, or maybe even threatening them or family members to keep them quiet. So a lot of the things around children is accessibility. And that's kind of same thing with elders also, is accessibility. A lot of them are sexually assaulted at the hands of caregivers. And depending on their mental capacity, if they, may have Alzheimer's or dementia or whatever, they are mentally incapacitated. They can't, make that decision, or, maybe even seek help or report, and so that accessibility also, if they, depending on the living situations, nursing homes or assisted living places. So just fear of retaliation from those people that may work in those places. So they are also a vulnerable population. Undocumented individuals, and I'll just kind of link that with non-English speakers. Where undocumented individuals, people know that they will not go to law enforcement. They won't report because of fear of being deported, or fear of them not having their own papers. Non-English speakers, just the language barrier, and then also not knowing the legal rights and the laws of the land, so don't really know what's their legal right. They don't know that they can go to law enforcement and file a complaint or talk about this. So there are definitely, and just also having different communities not having a great relationship or a trust for law enforcement. So that also influences why they, they're more vulnerable, because they know that they won't report. The LGBTQ community, just fear of being outed if the person is not out. Also, not having a great relationship or access to resources with law enforcement. So several reasons why they are more vulnerable, because kind of the same thing with the undocumented. They know that they may not report, they may not say anything, seek help because of just kind of like that privacy, or if they're not out, they don't want people to know. And same with individuals with disabilities, whether that's mental or physical, might not be able to report, seek help. So those are some of the populations that are particularly vulnerable to sexual violence. You could go to the next slide. And so this is the big question, like, who could be a perpetrator? And it's kind of like that same concept that, talked about, like, who can be a victim. And it's unfortunately anyone. There's no set profile of who is a perpetrator. Because as we look at some of these numbers, most of the people, most of the perpetrators are someone that the victim knows. So they run in the same circles, or they have some type of affiliation with the family or other clubs that they are part of. So these people are people that they know. So perpetrators, we always think about stranger danger, somebody hiding in the bushes and coming out, following you home late at night or whatever the case may be. And although that happens, the majority of the people are people that you come in contact with all the time. 8 out of 10 rates are, they know the person. A lot of them are acquaintances. So you do have that stranger danger, but for the most part, most perpetrators have some kind of relationship or contact with the victim. It's the same as with children. Like I said, 93% of them, they know the abuser. They have some type of relationship with them, or the parents have, and that's where that access comes in at, because they are known to the victims. 59% of the acquaintance. So don't think about, when you're thinking about sexual violence, yes, we want to lock our doors and, pay attention to our surroundings, but 9 times out of 10 or 8 out of 10, the perpetrator will be someone that the victim knows. So it's kind of scary, but this is the reality. Next slide, please. And just as I said, we are dual agency, and we see a big connection between intimate partner violence, domestic violence, and sexual violence. And what that looks like is we always talk about types of abuse. So within domestic violence, one of the types of abuse is sexual violence. So the intimate partner will use sexual violence as a means of control for their partner. This is where we see intimate partners. They will rape their partner and make them submit. You will see that there's a withholding of contraceptives or destroying contraceptives within this sexual violence, restricting access to health care, any type of healthcare for that person. You'll see pornography is introduced, or enforcing their partner to perform things that they see, and you also see digital violence within this as well, enforcing the partner to take photos, perform acts, and record them, and use that as leverage to control them. So we see this intersection in intimate partner violence and sexual violence. You can go to the next slide. So we talked about all of that, and I just kind of always want to give just a brief overview of what to look for if you might think that one of your friends or associates, you start seeing these different signs that maybe something has happened, and you might be able to approach them. But these are some of the warning signs of depression. So, you might see somebody that was, engaged, or somebody that was outgoing. Now they are always sad. They don't have no energy. They don't want to be, bother with anybody. They stay in the dorm or at home or wherever they're living. Now, maybe self-harming behaviors. Now they having suicide ideations. Low self-esteem. All of a sudden, you'll see an increase in drugs and alcohol, or more partying. Just kind of, these are things that are outside of their norm, that you begin to notice. Maybe even it seems like a form of some type of paranoia, where everywhere they go, they're kind of scared. They're looking around. So, just, or they don't want to go to specific places anymore. So these are all warning signs that something could have happened. And so, as I said, you can utilize our crisis lines to say something if you want to know what to say. But I have a few tips on the next slide. You can go to the next slide. So as I said, if you believe that something did happen and you want to say something, this is just a very brief overview of some of the things you can say. But the number one thing before you say anything, the number one thing is listening without judgment. That's really big. When someone decides to tell you something, you have to listen without judgment, not judging what they did, what they wore, you know, why did they let this happen? It's not a lesson that they need to learn right then and there. All of it is just for you to listen and be supportive, but don't judge actions, sayings, or even decisions afterward. Don't judge. You're just there to support. And it's a very hard thing. It's traumatic. It's embarrassing. It brings a lot of shame. So, you know, if someone decides to confide in you, just let them know that you do believe them, because that's one of the biggest things. Victims are scared that they won't be believed. Um, or even think that it's their fault, they deserved it, they drank too much, or they wore this, or they went this, or they trusted that person. It's all a bowl of emotions that's going on, and you as that person and listen, and that support system, it's important for you to let them know that it's never their fault, they never deserved it. You know, let them know that they're not alone, because they feel isolated, you know, and you feel shame. So these are just some of the things that you can kind of let them know, that you'll be there for them. And then asking questions like, how can you help? Because oftentimes we hear things and people are feeling some kind of way, and we want to help, and then we just kind of take it upon ourselves to do what we believe needs to be done. And we don't ask the victim as to what they would like to be done. You know, maybe they just want you to just listen and be that confidant for them. You know, they might not necessarily want you to do anything, you know, or maybe even ask them what do they want to do so that you can, you know, help them. So just, but not putting the pressure on them to do anything, because that's another thing too. We kind of pressure people into doing what we think is right. You know, you need to go and report, but if that's not what they want to do, or if that's not what they're ready to do, let it be their decision. And then also, as you're doing now, educating yourself with InterAct and other campus resources, that you might be able to share those resources. If that person, you know, has come to you, you'll be able to share those resources and let them know that they are out there if they want to use them. And then also talking with them about, you know, setting up some type of safety plan. And we, you know, on the crisis lines, our crisis counselors can kind of help them go through that. And we do individualized, in-depth safety plans on the crisis lines. So those are some of the things, just, and it's a lot more, but this is just a brief overview of some of the ways that you can help a friend or family member that have experienced sexual violence. You can go to the next slide. And so let's talk about survivors' options. And just know, as I said, not all survivors report. Not all survivors report to law enforcement. They might report to the campus and receive services. So there are options that survivors have. So let's talk about, you could go to the next slide, seeking support only. So that next slide, this is our crisis lines numbers. This is RAIN crisis lines, and it's an online forum that victims can use to just kind of talk it through, decide what they want to do, you know, what's available to them, what really happened, kind of work through that. So some victims just decide to seek help, and this is all, and that's fine. So these are those numbers if someone just looking to seek support. And then you could go to the next slide. And so this is our Solace Center. So as I said to you before, I will get more in depth. So our Solace Center, as I said, is Wake County's only community-based sexual assault forensic center. And it's located in our facility at 1012 Oberlin Road. And so our Solace Center is an alternative to the emergency department, because we all know that if you don't have any blood gushing, limbs falling off, if you go to the emergency room after such a traumatic event, you still will have to sit and wait, and maybe hours. And then when you are, and it's not guaranteed that you will get a forensic nurse, somebody that is trained in doing those rape kits. You're just going to get whoever's available. But at the Solace Center, we service one person at a time, so it's very private, and you are guaranteed a forensic nurse. So we have a partnership with all the local hospitals, so we have forensic nurses that are on call, and you can call our crisis line and they will have a forensic nurse that will meet you there. And then in addition to that, we have what we call sexual assault response advocates. So these are advocates that will also be there, but just to provide emotional support. Because when someone is going a rape kit, the nurse is focused on evidence because this potentially could go to court. So it's a chain of command that they have to, they have to adhere to. So they are focused on collecting evidence. And so we have response advocates that are there to provide that emotional support. So that whatever it is that they need, if they need a listening ear, if they need food, if they need them to explain to if they have family members or spouses with them, they kind of walk them through that process and be there for whatever they need. Because one thing about it, those rape kits can take a very long time, just depending on the extent of the case. It can be anywhere between 4 to 8 hours. So it's a very intense time. So we have those advocates there to be able to provide that emotional support. And all of our services are free. So definitely want to put that all our services is free. The rape kit, everything is free. You could go to the next slide. And so, as I said before, we service all gender identities. And then if it's 120 hours from the assault, we can service you. And then we service survivors 16 and older. If they are under 16, they will go to WIC-MED's emergency department. So we do service anyone that is 16 or older. And then once that rape kit is done, it can either decide, we don't pressure anyone in which way they go, so they can either decide to report to law enforcement and we will help them through that process, or they can decide to report anonymously so that rape kit will go to the state's forensic lab and it will be there. And that victim will get a number that's attached to that rape kit until they decide, or if they ever decide that they want to go further on. Next slide. And I kind of went through this to activate our Solace Center. Like I said, because we have nurses that are on call, not necessarily stationary, you will call the crisis lines first, and they will make sure they have that SANE that's available, and they will that SANE and Sarah will meet you there. Next slide. You could go to the next slide. This is just really about completing that rape kit, and they will walk you through that whole process as it's going on and before. So that's just more that you would get in depth once you're at the Solace Center. And then we do offer aftercare. So we do offer case management, come up, with the plan, help connect you with different support groups, or even get you hooked up with therapy if that's something that you're interested in. So we do offer aftercare. So we don't just leave you after you have, called our crisis line and met with one of our sexual assault counselors. They do follow up with you. And that's even if you didn't do the rape kit, you just call for support. We will definitely follow up with you and give you that individualized support. Any questions? I know there was a mouthful, but I hope you got something from it. And I'll be happy to answer any questions.
So we did have one question earlier about, are there free services if you're off campus, which I think you've covered, but if you could talk just a little bit more about that for Gina, please.
Yes, all of our services are free, and it doesn't matter if you are a student or, just the general public. We service everyone. So you can call our crisis lines and we definitely will help, as long as you are 16 or older for the Solace Center. But if you call and you need help and you're not 16, we still will talk with you. But as far as the Solace Center, if you're 16 and older, absolutely.
And it's showing up on screen now, but how do we detect a sexual behavior from others around us?
As I said, we could go back to some of those warning signs, depression, just a change in behavior, feeling real depressed, maybe even thinking about harming themselves. Some may come out and confide in you, because we found that 9 times out of 10, somebody will go to a friend or a safe confidant before they will report to an agency or something like that. So just looking at in those change in behaviors, especially after some type of event. And when I mean event, I don't mean just, something that, like a party or anything like that, but maybe a date, maybe being around certain people, and then those days following, weeks following, you see just kind of a change in behavior. And of course, there's no, unless the person tell you otherwise, it could be something else. But these are just some of the warning signs that we see when someone has experienced sexual violence.
Okay, and what are some of the practical ways to prevent sexual assault in day-to-day life?
Well, like we know, just being familiar with your surroundings, as you go on campus. Because one of the things that we find is that just this illusion that campus is safe. So, that's not true. And so we kind of put our guards down, so still just being aware of your surroundings, when it's late, dark or whatever, trying to travel in groups. If we're talking about going to any type of parties, it's still, those same safety things. If you have a drink, well, don't take any open drinks from anyone. Pour your own drink. Try not to drink out of punch bowls and different things like that. Always try to get a beverage that is closed. And if you do have any type of drinks, don't put them down. Take them with you even to the restroom. And if you do put it down, or it can't be, it's not monitored, throw it out. Get a fresh one. And if you do go out, try to go in groups and y'all stay together. Have code words. Maybe you might see a friend is engaging and you see that they're uncomfortable. Maybe you can, make up an excuse. Or if you hear, popcorn, I hate eating popcorn, that person just want to get out of there. And you might can find an excuse, to get them away. If you know your limit when it comes to drinking, if you see that your friend or yourself, you feel in some kind of way, try to exit the situation. And then just thinking about travel, try to make sure that if you are driving, there is a designated driver. Or if you do drive, you can also set, if you take Uber or Lyft, you can also set to have a ride pick you up at a specific time when you're going in. But we do also think about, someone inebriated by themselves in Uber can also be, a little scary or a little sketchy. So just kind of think about how you're going to get to and from different places. And then also just thinking about off-campus apartments or anything like that, still have that same, have some code words between, roommates, because people have been in separate spaces and have been assaulted and other people were around. So maybe y'all think about those code words, in there. If you hear some music, then they know to come and knock on the door. It's just being creative and talking about these things beforehand. So, because if they hear the music, which I never talked about it, they don't know what's going on, or they hear that code word. So just being mindful of those things, and get to know people. Don't be afraid. And this is not InterAct talking. This is a mom and a woman talking. Get to know people. Ask about people. Look at their social medias. We do that anyway. Look at their social medias, but look at what they, look at what they post, what they're interested in, the things that they say. Listen to those things. Not that that's always a tall tale sign, but these are things that can help. So and as friends, yeah, kind of it's safety in numbers. When you think about, if we all stay together, we look out for one another. So those are just some of the things that we often see as some best practices. Not
I did want to add in one thing that I do always when I'm going out or just all the time. I have my location shared with multiple people that I trust. Find my location. You can always just share it. if you're going out or just going somewhere, you can also send your location if you don't feel like having it shared at all times. If you feel uncomfortable or the atmosphere just doesn't feel right, send your location to one of your friends. And another thing, this might be a little bit off topic, but recently in the news, I've been hearing a lot about sex trafficking, and specifically with Target, and actually recently in Apex, the Brever Creek Target. There is a lady that approaches women that are alone, and she'll start talking to them, saying she needs help and whatnot. And then 2 vans will pull up and they'll block your car. So, like, I recommend, especially now, just if you can take a friend with you, if you want to go out and grab some snacks or anything like that, just be aware of who you're talking to, especially if someone's approaching you, specifically you, if it's a busy parking lot or something. Why are they coming up to you? It's by yourself, and like, what can you do to help them? Why are they approaching just you? There's a Target right there. There's workers that can help them.
And thank you for bringing that up. And someone had asked earlier, just before we get on to the next questions, but somebody brought up earlier, do we have some kind of police box? So if you have that unsafe feeling, and always trust your gut. If your gut tells you something's wrong, something's probably wrong.
Mm-hmm.
But we have, if you will look on any of the campuses, you'll see blue light boxes. And if you pick it up and you say, hey, I don't know why, but I'm creeped out, they will get someone there quickly. I've called them when I've had to leave in the middle of the night because I stayed late and worked and suddenly went, whoops, what did I do? They do not mind. Again, they want to be proactive. So don't ever feel embarrassed. And it's not if you're a male or a female or what have you. It's always the smart thing to do is to protect yourself. So please do that. Mm-hmm. And I think you'd mentioned code words, which we use with our kids. I love code words. And I think, does that maybe feed into the next question, which is, as a parent, what can we do to protect our children better?
Yeah, those are definitely, well, before I even move to that question, I just kind of wanted to add on what Lena was saying. Also, utilize your live apps. Like you said, you stream your location to people, but when you're in Target, you're out late or you're at a party, call somebody you trust and be live, talking to somebody, FaceTime, because if something happens, that person is also looking at that person, hearing what's being said, because even if you don't catch on, maybe they will catch on. I always do that, and my son is 20. And even when he was home and he would take Uber, I would FaceTime with him as he's in the Uber, when he's going certain places. So I always teach them to call and FaceTime somebody, because people are leery if you're on and you're showing. So if somebody's walking up to you and you kind of like showing them, like, yeah, this lady is asking me, or this person is asking me something, knowing that somebody else is watching. So definitely utilize those things. And then as parents, it's really teaching your kids, one, that these things are happening, and taking away just the thought pattern of the stranger danger. Not only stranger danger, because when you're dealing with kids, teens, we have this sense of safety, especially if it's someone that we know, a family friend or somebody. So really, as parents, it's our job to let them know. And it's something that I tell my kids: just because I know someone doesn't mean that you know them, or just because this person is a friend, as you said before, Lena, an adult never needs your help. No, that's not your job to help. If they need help, let them go to another adult, to ask for help. So really just, and then coming up with those code words. So just really just being vigilant and just knowing that these things are happening, and it's not happening over there somewhere. It's happening right here, So really just taking away that stranger danger, because we're looking over there and we're missing all of this right here. And then if we, because she said parents, so I'm just not sure the age, but with the younger ones, also letting them know that it's okay, and it's okay to say no to an adult. This is the one time where that goes out the window. An adult because what we see is a lot of it is acquaintance, that's an adult or something like that, even older siblings or older family members or things like that. And so it's always okay to say no if you are uncomfortable. That's when obedience and doing what that person says. If you have that funny feeling, you feeling uncomfortable, you can say no, all the time. You can say no, you can scream, you can do whatever. All holds barred goes out the window. There's no longer you have to follow the rules when it comes to your safety. So those are just some of the things I would suggest.
I wanted to add in something again. Another thing I feel that I noticed, especially maybe for our generation, a lot of girls feel like they have to be nice to, frankly, if someone is approaching them or anything like that. Like, I know this was a thing back in high school. They would receive pictures, like unsolicited pictures through Snapchat, and when you tell them, hey, maybe you should just block them, they're like, oh, I don't want to be rude or nice. You don't owe anyone to be nice. You don't have to be nice to everyone. If they are crossing your boundaries and they are making you uncomfortable, you don't owe them anything. You block them, you remove them, you do what you can to make yourself comfortable because they do not care about your boundaries.
Well said, Lena. Say it again. Well said. And I seen a question. Oh, okay. Well, as I said before, not everyone go to the police. So if I would encourage you to call our crisis line, and then also the campus, I don't know what's the name of it, the Women's Center. What's your campus services? You can go there as well. But first step, I would say, if the person wants to, seek help or whatever, to call our crisis lines and kind of let them help you process what has happened and talk to you about your options. Because if law enforcement is not always the only solution, and some people may not choose, especially at that moment, to go to law enforcement. So I would recommend going to victim services, whichever that looks like, InterAct or the campus services, and kind of process what has happened and, begin to decide what it is that you want to do. And then seek whatever physical help that you might need. If it's any kind of bruising or anything like that, you may need to see a physician prior to doing anything else. So it just depends on the situation, but just know that you don't have to go to law enforcement. That's a choice. Yes, it can, definitely considered under, sexual violence, unsolicited pictures and different things like that. And you can report it, because it is a crime to publish indecent pictures, online, and definitely without, someone's permission. So you can report it. I'm not sure about how they go about, because once it's out there, it's out there. So I'm not sure about recovering the pictures or whatever the case may be. But one of the things you can do, as Lena said, definitely if the picture is unsolicited and someone is sending it to you, definitely speak up about it. Don't want to be a part of it. Don't continue to share it. And if you do see a video of someone, because maybe that person didn't know, you can report it as well. Because sometimes things get out there and the person that is in it, the victim, doesn't even know it's out there. So you, as the person receiving or seeing these things, I would encourage you to report it, and don't be part of someone else's crime. Don't engage in it. It's not funny. It's not cute. So I would suggest you to speak up about it as well. Because I feel like, what made you think that it was okay to send this to me? That I would want to see it. So.
I just want to put in here, we had, thanks to Professor Emily Shurtleff, a couple of years ago, we had someone from the FBI who investigates cyber crimes, and he was pointing out, do not pass it on per se. So even if you want to let the police know, call them and tell them, because if you send it to them, you may be crossing that federal guideline. So if it is on your phone at all, definitely report it and then offer to let them see your phone, etc. But don't just email it in to them or something, because then you're actually forwarding and distributing. So they said always, call them, say it's on my device, and then let them take over so that it doesn't come back and hurt your future. That's all I was going to say. Thanks.
Yes, technically, with the Romeo and Juliet laws, and just know that this is baseline, statute. I don't interpret the law. This is not legal advice. So be very careful when, looking for loopholes or anything like that. Okay. But just the statute says that Romeo and Juliet law. So it's kind of like, it's that 4-year space. So if someone is under 16, maybe so like 15, and that person is 19, it's possible that 19-year-old may not be prosecuted because of that statute. And that's just my novice understanding. I want to say again, I'm not giving legal advice. This is just what the statute says, but just be very careful of interpreting those statutes and, trying to look for loopholes, because you still may be violating the law. They have, but I can't speak to the specifics of it. But I do know, like I said, you can, I would suggest, because I don't know much about the specifics of that partnership, but just, tips when you're in Uber, like I said, it would just Uber or Lyft. It would be great if you can FaceTime somebody and have somebody on there with you. You can schedule your lifts and different things and send that information, but I'm not sure of all the specifics with that partnership, so I can't speak to it. So I apologize. Any other questions? It's been fun. I love the questions popping up.
I just wanted to pop in real quickly. I think that's the end of the questions that I see. Actually, one more.
You said is adjustment. No, it's not an attempt. That is part of the law now. You can withdraw your consent at any time. So that is before you might have agreed and you decided, no, you don't want to go with it, or even during. So during intercourse, if you say, no, stop, that person is supposed to stop. You have now withdrawn your consent. Just because you was in the act doesn't mean that, you continue to consent. Or if you're, doing intercourse and this person wants to do something else and you say no, it's no. No is no. There's no way around it. No is no.
Thank you so much, Sharice. And I just appreciate all of the tips and the wisdom that you've shared from your professional experience and as a parent. I think that, for me personally, I've really appreciated just, all of the thoughtful questions. And one thing I really wanted to bring up just as a theme is I feel like part of the theme is around communication and having boundaries, understanding consent, and looking out for each other, whether it's code words, from parent to child, or looking out for each other in social situations or on a college campus. I just appreciated that theme came up again and again. That empowered communication, not being a bystander, and working to kind of build that healthy community, not where we feel isolated or ashamed or afraid, but where we are actively communicating those boundaries and looking out for each other, building those healthy relationships. So I just truly appreciate you sharing, and just want to say thank you.
Thank you so much. This was definitely great, and I appreciate you two putting this together and really getting this message out there because we always, screaming, trying to tell people about, domestic violence and sexual assault. So I really just so grateful for this platform and everyone that's on here. Any information that you have gained, please share. Share, like, make it a conversation. As you said, communication is big. Make it a conversation because it's still hundreds of thousands, millions of people that still think that these are isolated and it's not happening, or not sure if if it has happened to them because of the situation. As I said, a lot of that gray area with the manipulation, people are not sure what's really happening. So make it a matter of conversation. See where you and your friends' minds around this subject is. And if those conversations are continually happening, then it's possible that we can see a decrease, in this, or also just an increase in awareness and that community, because we letting in this community this is not acceptable. So
Right.
really have these conversations, and have them keep going. So thank y'all so much for this.
Well, and even virtually, I just wanted to say it was so nice to see everybody's face on campus. Sharice and Anthony, I'm sorry because I had to log on after Anthony actually got to speak more about Title IX and his role. But I just wanted to thank y'all because I feel like putting a face with a name and understanding all of the people that there are there to advocate for you and to help create that, that safe place and that healthy community and campus is really important. So thank you.
Thank you.
And thank you, Sharice, for overcoming technical struggles as I did.
Yes.
Too. I also just wanted to say, and I really appreciate it. I know that Lena had to leave the call, but she brought up several different issues that are related to social media and the digital platforms and all of the ways that we communicate, not face to face, but virtually. Right. So I did want to, Sarah, if you could share in the chat, I did want to share our next workshop a week from today, 2 to 3:30, and the information for how to access that. And I hope that for students, for attendees who are on the call, that you will share, that you'll have a purposeful conversation with folks around you, with family, with friends, and yeah, we would really like to be able to continue this this conversation.
Mm-hmm. Good times. Thank y'all so much.
Oh, absolutely. Thank you.
Thank you, and everybody have a great day. And don't forget, by the way, Student Government Association has 80 books of Know My Name, and it's heart-wrenching. I've already started it. But go to SGA's website, and they're giving away copies because the more we talk, the better we become as a community and get to an understanding. And thank you again to Title IX, to Anthony Garnes, and to Kris Ross. Please tell her thank you for us. She's amazing. And to Charlie, and of course to Elaine and Amanda. We've got some awesome resources, so please remember that if you are a student, there are 1,000 people waiting to help you. You just have to let us know, and then we'll get you to wonderful people like Sharice Potts. So thank you, and everyone have an awesome day. Hope to see you next week.